Chantelle, you've been involved in a whole lot of things during your life, the WNBA, coaching, confidence, and leadership training. You wrote a devotional. What is your motivation? What keeps you going out there?
Man, that's such a great question. I have done a lot, but what keeps me going every single day these days is the fact that I feel like I was created to do what I'm doing. My life before God, I was always very driven. I wanted to use my talents. I wanted to go out there and do what I was created to do, but I wasn't doing it for God. And now, when I finally met Jesus and I finally turned my life over to him, I was like, oh my gosh, the thing that broke me the most was that I had used my talents for so many years, but it was only for me and not for him. And so now going out every single day and doing the work that I do now, it's like, okay, I had half of it right, but now I want to do the same things, but do it for God instead.
Well, this brings up a logical question. How did you actually meet Jesus?
Man, I grew up in a faith-based household, so I always had a knowledge of God, and I thank my parents for that. I grew up Seventh-day Adventist and then ended up going to a non-denominational church for a while. But I was an athlete, I was ambitious, I was driven, and I looked around me and I didn't see uh, what I felt like an authentic relationship with God should look like around me or within my own life. And so at junior year in high school, I decided, okay, I'm not going to church anymore. And my parents gave me that leeway. They said, okay, you're old enough to choose not to, and so we're going to allow it. And so I stopped going to church and I walked away from God for many years. And I was a pro athlete. I went to college. I lived the stereotypical athletic life where I did whatever I wanted and got whatever I wanted, and it was just pretty reckless, honestly. But at some point, God started to get my attention, and I always say that some of us need a tap on the shoulder, and others of us need a 2x4 upside the head, and I was definitely the latter. God started to get my attention in the form of injuries. He took away the one thing I couldn't ignore, and that was basketball. And so I ended up tearing my Achilles when I was in Istanbul, Turkey. And at that point, that was my rock bottom. I realized I had done everything I knew to do right, but at that point, my life was a mess. I was laying in a hospital bed all the way across the world. I was single. I was broken. I was depressed. I was all of these things. And at that point, I realized that I was not in control. And if I'm not in control, I need to follow the one who is. And I also realized that I had really known who that was the whole entire time, but I just didn't want to admit it. I had wanted to play the God of my own life. But at that point, I realized I was a pretty bad God of my own life. I didn't make it work. So in that moment, I said, okay, God, I'm going to do life your way. I'm going to do it your way. And I had no idea what that meant, but I decided that's what I'm going to do. And then I went home and I started to read the Bible, not because I believed it, but because I figured maybe God was somewhere in there. And so I just started reading it. I started reading the Gospel of John. And when I started reading the book, I accidentally fell in love with the author. I just fell in love with Jesus. And from then on, I ended up meeting a group of women who really just walked me through discipleship and what it meant to follow the Bible and live for Jesus. And on September 17th, 2013, I was baptized. And, it's been my mission to live for him ever since.
You specified, what your own circumstances were. What do you find when you're sharing faith with others? What kind of roadblocks do people have getting to know Jesus?
Man, that's a great question. The roadblocks that people have, I would say, are very similar to me. On one hand, they know they're looking for something. They know deep in our hearts, we're like, there's got to be more to life than this. There has to be more out there. I want to be part of something bigger. And I think all of us try to fill it with these different things. And eventually none of that works. But like me, I didn't think God was the answer. I knew something was missing, but I didn't think that God could fill it. And it was only after I tried everything else and got most of what I wanted that I realized that even the things that I was chasing and even the things that I wanted were not enough to fill the something more that I was looking for.
That's the God-shaped hole that some people talk about.
Yep, absolutely. And we try to fill it with all different things, but I think the one thing I find is that people don't think it's God. They just keep chasing things and think that those things are going to fulfill it. And I'm always telling people, no. I remember I chased being in the WNBA my whole life, and my draft night, I was drafted second overall in the WNBA draft, and I went back to my hotel room and I cried myself to sleep that night. Not because it wasn't amazing that I was now in the WNBA, but because I thought that moment would make me enough, and it didn't.
Right now, you are involved in a project, team building at San Diego Christian College. Tell us what's going on there with that project.
Yes, I'm very excited to partner with San Diego Christian College. They really prioritize building their students up, not just on the court, but off the court as well, as far as preparing them for life. And so I have the opportunity to go and participate in a team building activity with the women's basketball team there at San Diego Christian College. We're going to draw parallels between what they already know in basketball and what they learn on the court every day, and help them apply those lessons to life and their walks with God.
So what kind of wisdom will you be sharing with them? Just maybe not in the formal training, but, when you're hydrating, talking about things like that. What do you plan to share?
Yeah, one of the hallmark of the things that we'll go into is basically showing them that they understand and believe everything that's already in the Bible as far as the principles. And the principles in sports are very, very similar to the principles of an authentic relationship with God. We just have to take the things that we're applying and apply it to our relationship with God. So that's one thing that I will be sharing throughout our segments. We have a segment where we're going to talk about going after our goals and how relationships are so central in going afterwards. You either sacrifice the goal you want or the relationship that's holding you back from that. And so really talking about that, talking about being fully committed. And if you are not fully committed to your sport, you will never get everything that you could or were meant to get out of it. And it's the same with God. When we are not fully committed to God, then we may have a surface knowledge of him, but we won't have an authentic and deep relationship that he desperately wants us to have. And so just drawing those parallels for them and then using examples from my own life as far as how I've learned that.
When you share something and you see a response, you see that somebody, gets it, it's getting through to them, what goes on in your heart? How do you feel?
That's the most rewarding moment ever. I remember there's been so many times in my life where I've had people who poured into me and who were helped me along my path, and those times made all the difference. But I've also had other times where I didn't have people in my life to help me, and those times were really hard. And so my goal is to be that person that these young women need to help them live the lives that they were created for with God. And so when I see that little light bulb go off, when I see that they get it and they're really embracing it and they're like, oh my gosh, I could actually use this, I'm like, yes, you can, because it would have saved me so much pain and so much just wasted time if I had chosen God first and chosen his way first. And so I'm just really excited to be part of their journey. It's such an honor. I don't deserve that grace from God at all. I spent too many years, over 30 years, using my talents for Satan, using my talents for everything but the reason God gave them to me. And so the grace that he gives me now to share his message with people who need it, it's the best feeling ever.
Now, looking ahead at your own future, do you have any plans, any thoughts you can share with us?
Absolutely. Well, as you mentioned, I just wrote a book of devotionals. It's called God, What the Heck? And it really came out of, a tumultuous 2020 that we all had, the international pandemic. I actually ended up losing my father last year as well. And it was during a time where I really had to fight and cling to my relationship with God. I was asking a lot of hard questions. And so I wrote a devotional book to help people through those hard times. And so I'm really excited to be continuing to speak on that. And I will be giving a couple of those copies away to the athletes at San Diego Christian College. So I'm very excited about that. And then building a platform, my platform is called Confidently His. So I help women build their confidence and identity in God through the scriptures. And so just continuing to teach that through my online content and through my upcoming podcast.
Okay, we will hyperlink to your page so that people can go there and find out more. And we sure appreciate your sharing your heart with us.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. I just appreciate this opportunity and appreciate the partnership with San Diego Christian College for setting it up.